The Indigo Jewel. Chapter 1. The Arrival. Why have I been chosen, and for what purpose was I born? One thing I know, every decision I make will be magnified 1,000 times. Nanshe, 3969 to 3913 BC. It was a clear spring evening, and the stars were shining brightly over the city of Unug. Located beside the Burununa River, the city was full of life, but it was not without sickness. Nanshe was awake, caring for her young son, who was sick with a fever. The water basin she had filled earlier was now empty. She had to keep cooling his body and helping him drink, or the fever would consume him. She would not rest until he was safe. She needed more water. She picked up a large clay pot and headed out the door toward the river. She knew the path to the river well, every stone and branch to avoid, every twist and turn she had to maneuver. The Burununa was full and beautiful in the starlight. She filled her pot and stood up to walk back the way she came, when over her shoulder she caught a glimpse of light moving across the sky. Nothing was as she expected. Instead of white, the falling star glowed a strange blue color. Instead of moving fast and smoothly, its movement was slow and erratic. And when it hit the ground, it only made a thump, like a rock falling off a ledge. It landed at the base of the hill, near a tree where they worshipped Inanna, when the morning star was visible in the sky. She noted the location in her mind and hurried up the bank with her pot of water. Bako's fever finally broke as dawn appeared, and Nanshe fell into bed exhausted. She slept until sometime after noon, when Bako nudged her, asking for something to eat. It was good to see him hungry again, even if he did disturb her rest. Together they ate a simple meal of bread with wine and dates. Hopefully there will be meat tonight when her husband comes home. Sometimes he brings home a fish after fishing all day. In the evening, with Bako and her husband both sleeping, Nanshe decides it is time to check on the mysterious falling star she saw last night, the one that fell with a soft thump. Fortunately, it fell on the near side of the river. There is no easy way to cross the Burununa without a boat. When she got to the tree, there was an unnatural light illuminating the area. On the far side of the tree, she found a glowing rock half buried in the sand. It was very different from anything she had ever seen before, so she reached down and picked it up. It was about the size of a small bowl, round like a ball, almost smooth on the surface. The strangest thing about it was its weight. It was lighter than she expected, much lighter. She tossed it in the air several times and caught it with one hand. This is not a product of nature or the hands of men. It's something totally different, she mused to herself. The sun was going down as she sat under the tree and examined the strange rock more closely. On one side were 5 small bumps, almost in a circle, but not evenly spaced. In fact, if she put her hand over the bumps, they lined up with the tips of her fingers. What would happen if she mumbled, and pushed all 5 bumps at the same time? To her amazement, the rock started vibrating as if it was alive. She pushed the bumps again, hoping it would stop, and the rock broke into 2 halves. Nanshe jumped back in astonishment. Embedded in one of the halves was a beautiful blue jewel. It was just the right size to hold in the palm of her hand. It seemed such an obvious thing to do. She picked it up and squeezed tightly. Immediately her mind was transported to another world. It was an impossible world with beautiful smooth buildings connected by moving paths, floating metal boxes with creatures riding in them, moving pictures on the walls, flying machines, and everyone speaking a strange language she could not understand. She dropped the blue jewel, and the vision vanished. Nanshe sat staring at the jewel for several minutes, trying to find the appropriate balance between curiosity and her need for safety. Besides, she had chores to do and was completely exhausted after staying up last night caring for Bako. Her decision made, she carefully wrapped the jewel in a piece of cloth, put it in her pocket, and hurried back home. Bako was playing in the corner with a toy his father made for him, a little wooden boat. She was sure she didn't want to see the strange images again so soon, so she hid the jewel under her bed. It would have to wait until later. She lay down and was asleep within moments. In the days that followed, Nanshe found herself drawn to the jewel, despite her initial reluctance to confront the strange visions again. She noticed how it seemed to hum faintly when she neared it, as though it were calling to her. At first, she ignored the call, focusing on the rhythm of daily life, fetching water, caring for Bako, and preparing meals. But each time she passed her bed, where the jewel lay hidden, she felt its presence tugging at her thoughts. One evening, curiosity overcame her caution. As the household slumbered, Nanshe retrieved the jewel from its hiding place. Cradling it in her hand, she whispered to herself, "What are you? What do you want from me?" She held it tightly and was pulled into the alien world once again. This time, the overwhelming confusion began to subside, replaced by fragments of coherence. The images were slower, more deliberate, as though the jewel was responding to her question. She saw the alien being who had first held the jewel. It was tall and slender, its skin a pale shade of gray, with elongated limbs and eyes that seemed to glisten like diamonds. It was alone, standing before a large face on the wall of a cave, and holding the jewel as reverently as Nanshe herself now did. The air around it held purpose and longing. Through its memories, Nanshe began to understand, though not in words, for their language was not her own. The jewel conveyed emotions, sensations, and ideas that seeped into her mind like water soaking into dry earth. She felt the being's pride, its duty, and its sense of purpose. In the nights that followed, Nanshe realized the jewel was teaching her. With each encounter, the visions grew clearer and the emotions sharper. Gradually, the consciousness of the being seemed to merge with her own thoughts, as if guiding her through its memories. Nanshe learned to focus her mind, stilling the noise of her human fears and distractions. When she did, the jewel revealed the hopes and fears of its last holder. She began to experiment with the jewel, holding it at different times of the day and asking simple questions. Her questions were never answered in words, but she could feel the jewel shaping her understanding. She began to feel a connection to the jewel and its alien holder on another world. A year later, she had a baby girl. As Nanshe's daughter grew, so too did the quiet unease within her. The jewel remained hidden, wrapped carefully in cloth, and tucked into a hollow space beneath the floor, where no one else could find it. Though she rarely touched it, its presence was constantly in her mind, an unspoken conversation that deepened with every passing year. Her daughter, whom she named Ishtar, after the goddess of love and war, was a spirited child. She was curious, fearless, and bright, with a mischievous smile that could soften even the hardest of hearts. Nanshe saw something of herself in the girl, and something more, a strength she couldn't name, but which seemed to come from a place beyond them both. When Ishtar played in the light of the morning sun, or laughed as she ran through the fields, Nanshe felt a warmth that made her question everything. How could she part with the jewel, knowing it might mean losing the bond she shared with it? Yet the jewel's pull was undeniable. At times, it spoke to her, not in words, but in feelings, in whispers that seemed to rise from her very soul. It showed her glimpses of a future where Ishtar held it, her young face marked by the same mixture of awe and confusion that Nanshe herself had once felt. These visions filled her with pride and dread in equal measure. Was it truly the right thing to pass the jewel on? Did Ishtar have the strength to bear its weight? And perhaps more importantly, could Nanshe let go? Years passed, and Ishtar grew into a young woman. Her curiosity only deepened, and though she knew nothing of the jewel, she often asked her mother questions that felt strangely directed. "Amma, where do we come from?" she would ask. Or, "Do you ever feel like there's more to life than what we see?" On the night of Ishtar's 17th birthday, Nanshe sat alone beneath the tree by the river, the place where she had first discovered the jewel. The stars were as bright as they had been on that night long ago, but now they seemed to watch her with quiet expectation. She held the jewel in her hands, its light soft and steady, and wept as she thought about the choice before her. For hours she sat in silence, seeking guidance. Finally, the jewel warmed faintly in her palm, sending a wave of calm through her. In that moment, she understood. The jewel was not hers to keep. She had been a steward, nothing more. Her role had always been to prepare Ishtar, to teach her strength, wisdom, and compassion. The time had come to trust her daughter to walk the path she herself had walked. The next morning, Nanshe called Ishtar to her side. She led her to the tree by the river and sat her down in the shade of its branches. For the first time, she showed her the jewel, its indigo glow reflected in the young woman's wide, astonished eyes. Nanshe spoke, her voice trembling. "This is a gift from the heavens. It is a great responsibility and a great honor. Soon it will be yours. But first, you must learn to listen, not just to the jewel, but to yourself." Ishtar reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing against the jewel. She gasped as her face lit with wonder, and Nanshe knew in her heart that the jewel had already begun to forge its connection with her. Though a part of her still grieved for the gift she was surrendering, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. This was how it was meant to be. From that day forward, Nanshe began to teach Ishtar all she had learned. Not just about the jewel, but about life, love, and the strength that comes from understanding one's purpose. Together, they stood as the first two links in a chain that would stretch across generations, binding mother to daughter and humanity to the stars.